I'll start things off with the basics, a blue ribbon apple pie, sure to win you a prize at the fair. When it comes to making a fruit pie, it really does start with the pie pastry. I start with 2½ cups of all-purpose flour, a tablespoon of sugar, and a teaspoon of salt. I've come across a new technique that ensures that your butter will not overmix into the flour. What I do is I first add 3 tablespoons of vegetable oil. Stirring the oil into the flour evenly coats the flour. So now the flour is insulated and protected and won't absorb all the butter. You can actually pull your butter from the fridge a good 15 minutes before you're going to work it in. 1 cup of unsalted butter. Slightly softened butter actually works in faster, ensuring that flakiness and tenderness in your crust. I like to use a pastry cutter. It's got these simple lines here that evenly work the butter into the flour. So I like to give the pastry cutter a little twist as I'm cutting in the butter, and I'll work the butter in until you see evenly sized pieces, but you should still be able to see the butter. And now it's time to add the liquid, a 1/4 cup of cool water, and a key ingredient is 2 teaspoons of either white vinegar or lemon juice. The acidity contributes to a tender, flaky pastry because it shortens or tenderizes the gluten strands in the flour. And then back to the wooden spoon, and then turn the dough out onto a work surface. As I'm bringing together the dough by hand, I'm folding it over. That builds in layers and flakiness. I'll divide it into 2 pieces. You can actually see the flakiness in there. Now I'll shape it into 2 evenly sized discs, 1 for the bottom layer and 1 for the important top layer. And now I like to give my pie dough at least an hour to chill in the fridge, to set the butter and also relax the gluten so that the pie dough is easier to roll. I'll just put my chilled pie dough out here for a second. I've got 6 cups of thinly sliced apples, the combination of Mutsu or Crispin apples for that starchiness that gives the apple pie body. I've got Gala apples to give it a beautiful appley sweetness, and I've got Cortland to sort of balance the 2 out. What I've discovered works very, very well is to simmer down half of the apples I've sliced. To let some of the juices come out and evaporate, it also concentrates the flavor at the same time. While they're simmering, I'll take care of the sweet filling. So 1/2 cup of granulated sugar and 1/3 cup of packed light brown sugar. Of course, what would an apple pie be without cinnamon? A full teaspoon. And to accent the cinnamon, a 1/4 teaspoon of allspice, and about the same of grated nutmeg. Now let's check on the apples. You can see they've let out some of their juices. They've also cooked down and absorbed some, concentrating that apple flavor. I use the slotted spoon so that way I can leave the excess juices in the pan. I'll add my spiced sugar mixture. When rolling out your pie crust dough, it's a good idea to keep it rotating. It's easier to keep it in that circle shape that way. You want to roll your pie dough to about a 1/4 inch thick, or just a little thinner than that. I've got a 9-inch glass pie plate on a baking tray to catch any drips as the pie bakes. Sprinkle the pie plate with a little bit of flour, and then place the pie dough on top. A common challenge that can happen when making a fresh fruit pie is that all the juices from the fruits soak through the bottom crust. I've got a great tip to fix that. I take a couple tablespoons of regular rolled oats and sprinkle it at the bottom of the crust. Any juices that cook down as the pie bakes are absorbed by the oats, and you won't even know they're there. And I just dot the top of the pie with a little bit of butter because that's what Grandma used to do. The top crust is essential on a fruit pie to protect the fruit as it bakes so it doesn't dry out. I roll the top to the same thickness as the bottom crust. And I press the crust on top of the apple filling to make sure it stays in place. Trim away the excess. You want to leave a little bit overhanging. To keep the apple crust secure, I'll tuck it under. To create a classic fluted edge, use my finger and thumb, pinch the crust down, and then pull with the opposite finger. I exaggerate the design because the pie crust will shift in a little bit as it bakes. The final step an egg wash. So just a whole egg with a few tablespoons of cool water. This promotes an even browning and also a nice shine. And a little sprinkle of sugar and just a little cinnamon stirred in. With a simple pair of scissors, just snip a few openings on the top of the crust to allow the steam to come out. And I've preheated the oven to 400 degrees. That really helps cook that bottom pie crust. After 10 minutes, I turn the heat down to 375 and let the pie bake for another 40 to 50 minutes. When baking a pie, I do prefer baking without the convection fan. That way, you won't over-brown your pie crust. After an apple pie has come out of the oven, you want to let it cool for at least 2 hours before slicing into it. Now, here is one that's already cooled and ready to serve up. Oh, look at that beautiful fruit filling